Welcome to GLOBEWATCH with me, Charles Ebune. Last month, the top American leadership invited the top brass of the African leadership and to discuss business in Washington, D.C. It was the first ever and the largest U.S.-Africa gathering in the American capital, Washington, D.C. The motive was to seek ways of improving American investments in Africa. The top executives of the African administration, just like in the business domain, pledged to see an improved American presence in Africa. After that, American businesses accepted to spend $37 billion of investments in Africa. But will America really invest in Africa? In a market already saturated by other actors, my guest today is a business consultant. For the past decades, he has spent time encouraging American businesses in particular to do business in Africa. Can the battle and the war be won at the same time of having massive American investments in Africa? Gaston MBOGLOU, welcome to GLOBEWATCH.
Thank you.
On the last day of the U.S.-Africa Summit, President Obama said, and I quote, "A new Africa is emerging." Can you sense any meaning out of that as a business?
I do believe in your introduction you said something very interesting. You said it is the first time ever that you have such a gathering of African leadership in the United States. I think there's no better statement than just that. President Obama is showing a commitment to really enable Africa. So this is a great start, and I'm very confident that we are on our way to do something very positive.
The African market is already saturated by the presence of the Chinese, who constructed the African Union headquarters to the tune of $200 million. Chinese investments in Africa for the moment stands at $206 billion, with American trade transactions estimated at $89 billion. Is it possible to win this battle?
I do believe that you're presenting a very good issue. When you look at the U.S., what makes the U.S. strong? The first thing is leadership. The second thing is innovation. And I want to touch on those 2 points. One of the things that the U.S. is doing now with Africa is really to promote the next generation of leaders that is going to help drive U.S. businesses in Africa. If you remember, prior to the summit, we have the YALI, Young African Leader Initiative, driven by President Obama, where you have 500 young people coming to the U.S., really to teach them the leadership that they need to come back and to grow the African business. The second thing is innovation. It doesn't matter where you go in the world, the U.S. is known for being able to come with new products that are going to change the world. What Africa needs today is innovation. What we need today are people who can help us take your bananas, whatever product you're having, take them to the next level. I think that's where the biggest growth is, and in a very short time frame, the U.S. can help us get to that level.
You said the U.S. can help us reach that level. You have been holding discussions with American companies, advising them, encouraging them, talking to them to come and do businesses in Africa. You even established the U.S. Cameroon Chamber of Commerce to encourage such kind of transactions. Are the discussions with you revealing that those big names of American businesses can really settle in Africa? You
know what? I'm very glad you're touching on the point. Maybe to better understand, I'll give you a very simple example. 30 years ago, almost Douala and Philadelphia, that is one of the largest cities in the U.S., have a sister-city relationship. Nothing ever happened. Philadelphia is one of the largest cities where most of the import of producers is come from Latin America. So working together with the CUD of Douala, we re-enable the relationship. Now we have a company like Hershey. Hershey was the leader in the U.S. on chocolate products that are very interested in understanding how can we come to Cameroon and help producers increase the yield of whatever they're doing. So I do believe we have to create awareness. The real point is, how do we show to people that Cameroon is the destination among some of the Central African countries? So there are a lot of countries that are very interested in coming to Cameroon.
What kind of business environment should exist in Africa for these huge American investments to come in? You know that the American society is a value-based administration. Yeah. If there is no democracy, there is no rule of law, yeah, there is no justice, there is no equity and transparency, such businesses, Coca-Cola, yeah, JP Morgan, yeah, General Electric cannot settle in Africa. Yeah. What kind of business environment should we expect in Africa to make sure that the $37 billion of investment promise really settle on the continent? And I like the fact that you're bringing that up. If you remember, one of the things that we're doing in Cameroon is engaging very large institutions. One of those is ENAM. Every time the US will tell you about leadership and governance, we know that in most of French-speaking Africa, we have the so-called École of Administration. That's where you get the leader and the next generation. So one of the things that we have done is help those people go to the US, understand how the US looks at leadership, governance, ethics. So recently we have 24 students that we brought to the US to make sure that they can really get exposure. And along those lines, we had the pleasure to have Mr. David Gilmore, who's at the State Department. He visited the ENAM student, and the State Department praised what Cameroon is doing. Happens to be guest on this program, David Gilmore. Oh, really? I'm glad we are talking to the same people. Okay. So they really praised the whole initiative to setting up governance. So I do believe by showing people that we really think about changing the way we do business, it's going to attract much more businesses. So that's really what we're trying to do. You are talking of Cameroon. You know that there are other countries involved. Yeah. Nigeria. Yes. South Africa. Zambia. Yeah. What kind of environment should we create? All the time the talk of Africa is that the business climate is not the best. You are a business consultant. Yeah. If you were to frame a master plan of doing business in Africa initiative, what are the benchmarks you put to make the continent attractive for foreign investments? I think what the continent has to do at first is really invest in capacity. When you look at Africa, very often we think about training people as something you just have to do. If I want to come here and invest, General Electric will never come with the top engineer and the lower end of the people. They want to come here with top engineer and use local people. If I know I have local capacity to do the job, I'll be able to bring a lot of investment. Look at India. How did India grow? Outsourcing has made India very strong. What did India do back then? They really helped the young people to go into those fields that are going to drive the economic growth. So by African looking at education as one of the key points in growing business. And the second thing is entrepreneurship. You know, one of the things that the US is doing right now, I don't know how much you know about it, we call it ADM, African Diaspora Marketplace. It is basically a platform where you have the World Bank, the USAID, Western Union. They're working together and to really put some money to help young entrepreneurs in African countries. It's about really pushing that next level. Small and medium businesses, it's also going to change Africa. If you have a very strong foundation of small and medium businesses, you're going to attract a lot of US businesses. Well, the discussion today, especially from most American business magnates, is that they are interested in doing small and medium-sized businesses in Africa. Why not large scale of the big names of the American capitalism system? Why are they afraid to do business in Africa? No, I don't think so, because even in the US, the backbone of the U.S. economy are small and medium businesses. You know, that's why we have an entire administration called the SBA, Small Business Administration. All what they do to really incubate, take somebody from an idea all the way up to become a big business. So the real thing is, how do I drive... A kind of startup system. Exactly. How do I drive the middle class through those small businesses? That's the same thing we have to do here. And I'll give you an example. GE, they have their way to come in. You know, they don't need you, they don't need me. And very often, how many jobs are they going to create? I don't know. But what I know is, if you give a job to one person who is creating a little company just to manufacture, I don't know what, you know, something very simple, the value chain grows pretty fast. Because let me say I'm transforming banana that I'm going to export to, you know, to Nigeria. That's my neighbor country. I'll have the farmers that are involved, the people in logistics. Those are some of the things that creates much more job along the value chain. So I do believe that the small business, similar to the US, it's what's going to make us grow. Okay. You are specialized in business management and technology in particular, where you have a PhD. You assisted the largest German telco trainer get a $62 billion investment design in marketing entry and whatsoever. And you equally assisted another company get about a $100 billion in transaction to reduce cost and whatsoever. You said a while ago that we need innovation. Is technology key in this new African economic dynamics?
For me, I'm looking at technology as a new, it's part of, as you could, the ADN of the DNA, sorry, the DNA of the new economy. There's nothing you can do today without touching, IT. And I'll give you a very simple example. A few days ago, I was in Douala. I was part of a microinsurance conference where I took part. One of the challenges with microinsurance is that people are looking at, say, they don't know how to get started. You and I know, go to Tanzania, go to South Africa. Microinsurance, it's happening on the phone. So the phone is now no longer a piece of technology just to talk. It's part of something that's going to drive business. And by doing so, they can offer insurance for 300 francs. I'm saying 300 francs CFA to a mom who's in the village. And within 72 minutes, they can pay the claim. So technology is totally changing the way we're doing business. So I do believe only by understanding the role of technology in what we do are we going to be able to grow. It's very critical.
Let me tell you what the chief executive of General Electric, Jeff Immelt, said. We gave it to the Europeans first and to the Chinese later, but today it's wide open for us. We are talking about Power Africa.
Yes.
What are those initiatives that the American administration is putting in place now to expand businesses in Africa?
As you know, after the summit, President Obama committed a lot of $1 billion for Africa. And some of the things that are in that package, the first one is Feed the Future. And Feed the Future will extend somehow to the AGOA, the entire discussion about AGOA. How do we get AGOA extended so that...
Africa Growth and Opportunity Act.
Exactly. How do we enable AGOA to extend it? So it's going to go to the Congress. And then how do we enable African countries to really export under AGOA? The second thing that's coming under that, AGOA, it's entrepreneurship. The whole reason they have the YALI, the Young African Leader Initiative, it's because they want to make sure that we have young people who can take the lead and really pave the way for the next generation. And the third thing, it's Power Africa. You and I know, every time in Yaoundé, whenever the power is off, you can't do anything, or in Douala. So power is the most critical part of driving business growth. We're talking 2035. And I see Cameroon is doing a lot of good things in terms of, power plant and everything. Power is the most critical thing that we need. The third thing that I want to bring up is also the African Trade Hub that a lot of people don't talk about. Recently, we met with the State Department, and my question was, when you go a little bit north of Africa, you have a trade hub in Ghana, you have one in Kenya, and you have one in South Africa. What happened to Central Africa? There's almost nothing there to drive that whole discussion. And those are some of the things that we're trying to push and provide some suggestion. How can we work together to make sure we create a trade hub in Central Africa? Through the trade hub, now you can really grow the American presence and American investments.
You are talking about empowering the Central African sub-region, and I was coming to that. Barack Obama's Power Africa initiative is expected to light 50 million new homes in Africa. The biggest energy potential on the continent is found in the Central African Republic, in the Central African region, precisely in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. You know of the Inga project. You know the Democratic Republic of the Congo has the biggest thermal energy potential in Africa. And when I read at the documents and the strategic planning of Power Africa, the Central African sub-region is completely out of business. This is gamble politics by the Obama administration, surely, right?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I believe the challenge you're facing, and that might be based on history, you speak mostly French. So when you get on the table...
So this is a French zone of influence in which the Obama administration don't want to encroach.
Not necessarily. I do believe that the challenge you're having is when you're meeting with officials, you speak English, I speak French. So there's already a barrier. So the more we go after those people and try to get into their
But
culture,
Light does not speak French, Light. Everybody needs Light. Everybody needs education. So
that is totally
Light
true.
does not, they don't understand language.
That is exactly true. But what I'm trying to go down to is, once we can engage and speak the same language, go after those people, it's going to be able to better present some of the project. I gave you the example of Vietnam. That's a very good illustration. The reason we try to bring up to the past, we never had students from that school going to the US. Funny enough, everybody who went there spoke English. So it opened a different set of doors. The companies they met, it was amazing how engaged they were. A lot of those companies are asking them, how can we come to Cameroon and invest? That is the same way you're going to engage energy companies. We have to go and seek it. They won't come to us. They don't need us. We need them. So the more we engage and try to bring those projects to us, the better off you're going to be. And I want to give you another example. I told you about ADM, African Diaspora Marketplace. Until last year, Cameroon was not part of the African Diaspora Marketplace. The first prize is $100,000 to the best idea in entrepreneurship. I went to the USAID 2 weeks ago, and I asked them the question, why don't you put Cameroon on the map? Cameroon is going to be part of ADM 3. So we have to go and seek those things. They won't come to us by themselves. So if Central Africa has a potential, let's go sell it to the US.
Okay. This is President Barack Obama talking again.
Yeah.
Up to tens of thousands of American jobs are supported every time we expand trade with Africa.
Yes.
Who stands to gain from all these business transactions?
Both. I'll give you a very good illustration. In December, we'll have Promote in Yaoundé. And one of the companies that I want to bring is the larger importer of South African producers, banana, pineapple, and everything else. What they told us is Africa is growing, and the US market needs a lot of food. I want to go to Cameroon, and in fact, I'm willing to invest in large farming so that I can bring the products in the US. Why does he want to do that? Because the more they sell in the US, the more money they make, the more employment they create, correct? On the reverse, the more you import from Cameroon, the more farmer you enable in Cameroon, the more jobs you create. So it's really a win-win situation for both. The US is winning by creating local jobs and driving local economy. Cameroon is winning by enabling export, and that goes back to AGOA.
Will you like to see a lot of delocalization? Because when you talk of ensuring a stable business climate in Africa, like US Secretary of State John Kerry has said that the more people are educated, the more people are economically viable, the lesser Boko Haram, the lesser Al-Shabaab, the lesser insecurity, the lesser all what you can imagine, which is devilish, as some people may qualify it. Will you like to see General Electric plants found in Africa, IBM, International Business Machine Companies, just create their extractions and they remain here? Or you just want technology to come and the next day they leave?
No, no, no. And I'll use a French word. We always say, vaincre la famine à point d'oreille. So, if the young people don't have something to eat, they will tend to do something they shouldn't be doing in the first place. I strongly believe that our job as business consultant or business enabler or chamber of commerce is to drive those bilateral trade. I don't think it's about importing technology. And I'll give you a very good illustration of why I don't believe it so. I mentioned that we are working with Polytech, or maybe if I didn't. We are working with Polytech. We've been working for 5 years. There are two things you're trying to do at Polytech. The first thing is you're trying to do something called an incubation, where you take 15 young people every single year with bright ideas. You take them through training, you take them through advising, and then after 18 part of the US. So those jobs are being created in Cameroon so you can export. On the other side, you know, one of the things that made India very grow so fast is outsourcing. So at Polytech, we're building a technology park where we're going to bring US company in Cameroon to hire Cameroonian and create jobs. The first wave of people were interviewed yesterday. So within the next month, we're planning to have at least 10 or 20 people go to the US to get trained, and within a year, we're going to have 1,000 people sitting here in Yaoundé doing the job for the US. So it's not about GE just sending you technology, it's sending us the jobs here so we make money in Cameroon.
You know, one major criticisms somebody can level to that policy. You know, a majority of our leaders today were trained in the Western communities before they came to rule us.
Yeah.
And it has been somehow catastrophic. It is debatable. And today there is another generation of the future leaders which are progressively being trained in the Western world on the basis that it is the best system of education, they will not be corrupt. They will all know that when they come back, they are the best corrupt officials and business magnates we may have. Don't you think that you as individuals, Africans, creating these businesses and doing the training here in Africa will be more fruitful to the communities?
I do believe so, and that's one of the reasons, personally, I try to come here and share some of my experience. I do believe that the more you share...
Because the argument is that, okay, if you train somebody in the US, if he comes to govern Cameroon, he will be reasoning with the American mentality, he will be reasoning with the French mentality. You know, a product from France will reason the way the French people reason, so he will not understand the country realities.
But that's not true. I mean, I've been coming to Cameroon every 3 months for the last 5 years. The first year, of course, people will say, Gaston, you don't know Cameroon. It's totally different. Today, people understand that I spend a lot of time. I train people like the Bayam Salam in Bamenda because I want to understand their challenges. The more you understand the people and what they go through day in, day out, the better you can advise them. So I do believe that we have changed. We understand the diaspora has to play a very strong role in Cameroon, so we want to make sure we adapt. And as you bring people, you also help them. And I want to share something with you. My partner, he's American. He has been in Cameroon for the last 5 years. I've been here like 30 times, and very often without me. He understands Cameroon now pretty well.
Okay. Before we conclude, corruption has been defined and identified as a major hurdle to encouraging American businesses in Africa. Do you have a feeling that African governments are really committed in slashing down corruption?
I do believe yes. You know, I think we are reaching a point where people understand to really get investors here, we have to be serious about changing the way we do business.
How can you say you believe that when the Kofi Annan report, African Progress Report, concludes that yearly $50 billion leave Africa through illicit financial flows, and this money is not being taken by the ordinary man on the street? I thought big people in the corridors of power would take back the money to Europe, because the moment the Europeans bring, the Americans bring money for investments here, the next money is that money is found in one account in Philadelphia, in Miami, in Swiss. I don't know.
But the point is, as I was telling you, there's a notion of e-governance, and that's where technology comes back in. It will take some time to make sure that you close all the loopholes in the system. But by bringing e-governance, that's nothing else than using technology and processes to lock down some of the key challenges. And I'll give you an example. 15 years ago, to wire money outside of the country, you could go anywhere and wire a lot of money. In order to do it today, you need, they call it the DI. You have an authorization to wire money. So that means in order to do that, it's getting very difficult. People will probably always find ways, but you have to make sure that the government as entity, it's making it very hard to people to do things they shouldn't be doing. And that's where the e-government really has its place.
Final thought. Dutch Bank, Dutch Telecom, Hewlett Packard, IBM, Merck, Siemens, Volkswagen are some of the biggest names in the global business industry. You have served as an advisor or as a consultant to all these businesses. Should we be expecting them very soon to do large-scale businesses in Africa, as the Americans have promised?
Big times. I think this is the time for us, and I always say we have to go sell to them and bring them down here. One of my biggest challenges for this year is to bring either Microsoft or Google, or one of those biggest people here in Cameroon, to work with us in some of the entrepreneurship program. So I hope that in a very short time frame, you and I will be sitting down back here, probably with one of those executives, and asking yourself the question, what's next?
Gaston MBOGLOU, thanks very much for accepting to be guest on GLOBEWATCH.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.